we are a nation built on the rule of law. And so we need to accept that this decision was the grand jury's to make. There are Americans who agree with it, and there are Americans who are deeply disappointed, even angry. It's an understandable reaction. But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully.
Despite calls for peaceful protests, and despite what those who stress violence only begets more violence and in the end gets little accomplished, we're seeing a physical escalation in response to the events of Ferguson and Staten Island. The issue of race is in our national face yet again, as if it ever really left. Only this time it's being hijacked by those with an agenda. And it's those same people who are doing little or nothing to bring the level of discourse down to where we can intelligently talk about it and effect real change. It's a pleasure to welcome back to MidPoint noted civil rights activist, Christian minister, author, and member of a proud civil rights lineage. Dr. Alveda King joins us. Dr. King, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Ed. Hello.
It's good to see you again. We see the riots now in Berkeley, California, and other places. We hear the calls from parents and other people involved, both in the Ferguson case and Staten Island, for peaceful demonstrations. Yet what we see are windows being broken, bricks being thrown, and more fires being set. Some people say that this is the new civil rights movement. I would imagine that you and your family would look at this and say, something's really wrong here if this is what we need to push this discussion forward.
My father, Reverend A.D. King, Alfred Daniel Williams King, brother to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., my uncle, Daddy A.D. and Uncle M.L., I often saw them engage in the midst of rioting and say to those who were disappointed, as has been said about these grand jury decisions, violence is not the way. We must use peace. We must use prayer. We must use the law and use our words. Of course, their methods were very effective. They led peaceful demonstrations, sit-ins at lunch counters and streets. They led little children, hundreds of African-American children in 1963 on the children's marches. I attended one of the children's march myself, my father there supervising me. So I know firsthand, as a civil rights activist who marched and went to jail later in the 1960s, that peaceful, nonviolent conflict resolution is effective. Then you will not have properties of the actual residents of the various cities destroyed. There's a lady in Ferguson, her store, an African-American woman, her antique store was firebombed. And she basically asked the question, how will firebombing my store bring justice for Michael or for anyone? And you know, I think that that voice of reason has got to be heard.
Are we looking at the fact that the President of the United States and his Attorney General are complicit in this, in not being at the forefront of pushing this discourse down and trying to at least convince people to try the manner of simple resistance, peaceful resistance, yet they are the ones who in some ways are pushing it forward, the bad side, the rioting and such?
Well, when we consider the president or the attorney general, and they are calling for peace on television and with their messaging, and yet the president is supporting one of the voices that is now being heard in America saying no justice, no peace. And I'm speaking of Reverend Al Sharpton. And so you can call for peace, but then you promote the voice and message of one who is pretty much known for bringing agitation and attention to an issue. And then once that the level of agitation and excitement has been raised, then the voice says, now help me solve it. Give me some money and pay me to stop it. And so that really has been a tactic. But I would like to propose to America that the best way to do this is to follow the messaging of Martin Luther King Jr., Alfred Daniel Williams King Sr. They were nonviolent, peaceful warriors. I am still living in that model today. I believe even my cousin Martin III said that his father would be very disappointed to see all of the violence. I know my father would be very disappointed, and yet he would be encouraging America to seek nonviolent, peaceful conflict resolution, and Uncle Emil and Daddy would also say pray, seek the God of heaven for help.
All right, stand by just a few minutes. Dr. Alveda King returns after the break. We move the discussion forward. Who are the young civil rights leaders? Where are they? And why are we not hearing from them? And at 43 minutes after the hour, police officers who do the right thing and need to be noted for some holiday spirit. It's on MidPoint.